I've loved baking for as long as I can remember. Some of my earliest memories are of standing on a worn wooden stool in Grandma Eliza's small kitchen in Portland, Oregon, her hands guiding mine as we kneaded dough together. She always said, "Baking is love made visible," and I never questioned her. I could feel it in the warmth of the oven, the smell of cinnamon rolling through the room, and the smiles of the neighbors when we handed out fresh cookies. That feeling of creating something that brought joy to others became the center of my world. At home, it was different. My father, Richard, built a reputation as a sharp, relentless attorney. Success to him was measured in billable hours, prestigious clients, and the occasional glowing feature in the business section. My mother, Elaine, balanced her hospital administrator career with maintaining a flawless household and a social calendar that often felt like a second job. They had Tyler and Lisa, two children who followed the rules and achieved on their terms. Tyler thrived in finance, climbing the corporate ladder before he even turned 30. Lisa excelled in marketing, flaunting her promotions on social media, while Mom and Dad proudly broadcasted every achievement. Then there was me, the middle child with flour perpetually under my fingernails and a notebook full of recipes. My parents treated my passion like a charming hobby, something cute but never serious. I understood early on that my love for baking didn't fit their definition of success, and that awareness shaped how I pursued my dream quietly, with determination hidden beneath polite smiles at family dinners. Even as a child, I knew the road ahead would be complicated. But with Grandma Eliza's lessons etched into my memory, I found a spark inside me that refused to be dimmed, a spark that would carry me toward the bakery I was determined to one day open. This spark guided me through years of compromise, late-night experiments, and careful planning, eventually bringing me to the moment when the first real steps toward sweet gatherings could finally begin. Growing up in the Caldwell household, achievement was the family currency. Tyler earned awards in finance competitions and internships that would make any parent beam with pride. Lisa collected accolades for her marketing campaigns, flaunting them at every opportunity. My parents monitored each milestone, meticulously calculating how every accomplishment would reflect on our family's reputation. In that environment, my love for baking felt inconsequential, a charming distraction rather than a legitimate pursuit. Even in high school, when I spent hours perfecting a cake or experimenting with new flavor combinations, my parents' praise was measured and polite at best. "It's cute, Marin," Mom would say, tapping her clipboard, "but make sure you're focusing on activities that strengthen your college applications." My father would nod in agreement, usually after a meeting or phone call, adding, "You've always been good at chemistry. Maybe that could translate into medicine." I learned quickly to smile and nod, suppressing the longing to be recognized for what truly brought me joy. By the time I entered college, compromise had become second nature. I chose to major in business, knowing it would appease my parents and provide me with practical tools, while minoring in food science, the only concession to my heart's desire. I enrolled in every baking elective I could fit into my schedule, quietly studying the chemistry of sugar, the mechanics of yeast, and the subtle alchemy that turned raw ingredients into joy. It wasn't rebellion, it was careful negotiation, a way to pursue my dream without triggering parental disapproval. Yet, even as I excelled academically, a quiet conflict brewed inside me. Every report card, every course syllabus, felt like a reminder that my passion existed in parallel, never fully acknowledged, always secondary. I envied Tyler's promotions and Lisa's public recognition, but I also understood that my worth was measured differently. I wanted to create, to nurture, to craft something tangible and beautiful. Still, I carried a silent fear could my dream survive in a world where those I loved most dismissed it as trivial. That tension became the undercurrent of my college years, shaping my choices, my work ethic, and the careful balance I maintained between following my own path and meeting the expectations laid out for me. It was a delicate dance, and every step brought me closer to a moment I had long anticipated, the day when I would finally bring Sweet Gatherings into the world. And with that quiet determination, I began taking the steps that would transform late-night experiments and small victories into the foundation of my future bakery. After college, reality hit hard. I worked mornings as a barista at a small downtown cafe, spent afternoons filing paperwork and answering phones at an office job, and used weekends to bake custom cakes and pastries in my tiny apartment kitchen. Every day was a balancing act between earning a living and keeping my dream alive. My apartment smelled perpetually of sugar and yeast, a constant reminder that I was slowly building towards something meaningful. Mrs. Bailey, the owner of Bailey's Bake Shop, became more than a mentor. She was a guide who showed me that baking could be a viable career, not just a hobby. She introduced me to profit margins, inventory management, and customer service, teaching me to treat baking as a business as well as an art. Watching her manage her shop, seeing the joy her creations brought to customers, and hearing her say, "You have a gift, Maureen. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise," gave me a confidence I hadn't felt from my family. She believed in me when no one else had, and that belief became the foundation of every decision I made. While working long hours and scraping together every dollar I could, I sketched plans for Sweet Gatherings in a notebook I carried everywhere. I imagined a place with sunlight streaming through big windows, a counter full of pastries inspired by Grandma Eliza's recipes, and cozy tables where neighbors could gather and connect. I pictured the smell of fresh bread mingling with coffee, the sound of laughter as friends and strangers found common ground over shared treats. Each recipe I perfected, every new idea I tested, brought me closer to that vision. The work was exhausting, but each small success fueled my resolve. Late nights spent mixing dough, early mornings arranging cupcakes, and weekends delivering cakes to local clients felt like steps along a path only I could see. With Mrs. Bailey's guidance and my relentless determination, I began to understand that building this bakery would require more than skill. It would demand persistence, sacrifice, and unwavering faith in the dream I had nurtured since childhood. And so, with every passing day, I moved closer to the moment when Sweet Gatherings would finally open its doors to the world, a space born of patience, love, and years of quiet preparation. After months of searching, I finally found it, a corner storefront in a quiet Portland neighborhood just starting to buzz with revitalization. The building had tall windows that let sunlight flood every corner, original hardwood floors that creaked with character, and exposed brick walls that spoke of history. It wasn't perfect. There was work to be done, paint to scrape, and counters to restore. But the moment I stepped inside, I could see it. This was the place Sweet Gatherings would call home. I called my parents immediately to share the news. As expected, Dad's voice was measured, almost clinical. "I can help fund this, Marin," he said, "but if I invest, I need to guide the business. I have experience managing ventures like this, and I don't want your hard work to be wasted." I nodded politely, knowing what that meant: control, restrictions, and a vision that might eventually overshadow mine. Mom's response was softer, but equally dismissive. "Have you considered graduate school? It's not too late. You could take a program in business or hospital administration. It would open doors." Their words stung, but I refused to let them dampen my excitement. I had saved every possible dollar, learned from every lesson Mrs. Bailey had imparted, and now I had the opportunity to transform years of planning into something tangible. I walked through the space again, imagining the aroma of fresh bread mingling with coffee, the display cases filled with pastries inspired by Grandma Eliza's recipes, and neighbors gathering at tables, laughing and sharing stories. I signed the lease that week, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Every detail, from arranging the kitchen layout to planning the menu, made my dream feel increasingly real. For the first time, The idea of sweet gatherings wasn't just a series of sketches in a notebook or late-night experiments in a tiny apartment. It was becoming a physical, breathing space that people could experience. Even as I tackled the endless lists of renovations, permits, and supplier calls, I carried a quiet confidence. This was my dream, my vision, and every decision I made reflected the countless hours I had invested. I knew there would be obstacles, skepticism, and resistance, but for the first time, I felt the thrill of taking control and trusting myself fully. With the lease signed and the storefront secured, the next step was clear: preparing the invitations and planning the grand opening, a day that would test everything I had worked toward. Chapter 5: Invitations Sent. I spent hours crafting the invitations for sweet gatherings, choosing thick cream-colored cardstock and embossing each name in gold. Inside, I included a handwritten note for each family member, sharing how much their presence would mean on this milestone day. Sending the invitations felt like sending a piece of my heart, hoping they would understand the significance of what I had built. Responses trickled in over the next few days, and with each one, my heart wavered. Dad's text read, "We'll try to make it if court adjourns early," penciling in a tentative commitment. Mom replied with a vague, "Work is busy, but I'll see what I can do." Tyler was brief and businesslike, noting only, "I'll check my calendar for that week." And then there was Lisa. Her response sounded cheerful enough. "Sounds fun. Work is crazy, but I'll try to stop by." Yet beneath the words, I sensed her excitement was elsewhere, her mind already on the promotion announcement she had hinted at for weeks. I tried not to let their lukewarm replies dampen my own excitement, convincing myself that once they saw the finished bakery, they might understand. Each evening, I imagined the display cases filled with pastries, tables set for family and friends, and a space alive with laughter and conversation. But a nagging worry settled in the pit of my stomach. What if they didn't come? What if my hard work, my dream, was not enough to pull them away from their own schedules and priorities? Still, I focused on preparation, reminding myself that the invitations were sent, the space secured, and the dream within reach. I poured energy into finalizing the menu, planning the layout, and coordinating with local suppliers. The anticipation built with each passing day, a mix of hope and anxiety that kept me moving forward. As the grand opening approached, I found myself holding my breath for the day that would finally reveal whether my family would stand with me or continue to watch from the sidelines. The morning of the grand opening arrived with a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. I moved through the bakery, arranging pastries in neat rows, labeling each one by hand, and making sure every display case reflected the vision I had carried in my head for years. Annie brought fresh flowers she had arranged herself, placing small bouquets on every table, while Marcus checked the signage and helped set up a small chalkboard with the day's specials. Their presence was steadying, a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in this. As the clock ticked closer to opening time, I checked my phone repeatedly, hoping for a message from my parents or siblings. None came. Instead, my feed filled with photos from Lisa's promotion party. Champagne glasses clinked, banners flashed her name in bold letters, and my parents posed proudly beside her, each post, perfectly curated, pressed against the ache in my chest. I forced myself to focus on the bakery, on the customers I would serve, but a part of me ached at their absence. I opened the doors promptly at 9, taking a deep breath and greeting the first wave of early customers with as much energy and warmth as I could muster. Coffee machines whirred, the smell of fresh bread filled the air, and I smiled through the tension, pouring my heart into every latte and cinnamon roll. Yet, even as I interacted with patrons, my mind drifted to the empty chairs that should have been occupied by family. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed. I glanced down and froze. The message was from Dad. "We need to discuss the bakery." There was no congratulations, No acknowledgement of the months of preparation, no admission of the conflict caused by Lisa's promotion party. Just a businesslike statement that made my stomach twist with frustration and disappointment. I placed the phone face down and took a shaky breath, trying to refocus on the customers in front of me, on the hours of work that had led to this day. Annie and Marcus exchanged concerned glances, sensing the tension I was holding back. I reminded myself that this was my vision, my dream, and no matter who showed up or didn't, I had brought it to life. Even with the emotional low settling in, I knew I had to keep moving, preparing for the rest of the day and the people who would appreciate what I had built. The bakery was alive, and it was finally real. Later that afternoon, while organizing my recipe notebooks, a small envelope slipped from between the pages of Grandma Eliza's old journal. Her familiar, looping handwriting spelled my name on the front. With trembling hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. Her words spilled over me like a warm embrace, a reminder of the woman who had always believed in me. If you are reading this, Maureen. The letter began, "You have found the courage to follow your dream despite the obstacles. Your passion for baking is not a hobby. It is your gift, your way of connecting with the world. Your family may not see it, but that does not diminish its value. Never forget that the true measure of your success lies in the joy you create for yourself and others." I sank onto a chair, clutching the letter, feeling a release of tension I hadn't realized I was holding. For years, I had sought approval from those who measured success differently, comparing my accomplishments to Tyler's promotions and Lisa's accolades. Grandma's words reminded me that my path was valid, meaningful, and worthy of dedication, independent of anyone else's recognition. The ache left by my family's absence softened, replaced by a quiet determination. I shifted my focus from longing for their presence to nurturing the community around sweet gatherings. The customers who had come, the friends who had supported me, and the neighbors I had yet to meet became the foundation for the bakery. I envisioned a space of warmth, connection, and joy. I tucked the letter safely back into the journal, letting its message guide my next steps. Each pastry I arranged, each latte I poured, would now carry not just the flavor of Grandma Eliza's recipes, but the purpose she had instilled in me to create love and connection through baking. With renewed clarity, I turned my attention to planning events and community gatherings that would make Sweet Gatherings more than a bakery. It would be a place where people could truly belong. I spent the following weeks reaching out to neighbors and local businesses, inviting them to collaborate on a small community event at Sweet Gatherings. Annie offered to host flower arranging demonstrations. Marcus arranged for book readings at his shop across the street, and a few nearby cafes agreed to feature pastries from my bakery. I wanted the event to celebrate connection, creativity, and the joy of sharing something authentic with the people around me. On the day of the gathering, the bakery buzzed with energy. Tables filled quickly, laughter echoed, and customers lingered longer than usual, chatting with one another and discovering small joys in shared experiences. Social media accounts began to light up with posts, photos, and stories about the event. Local bloggers took notice, and a small neighborhood paper ran a feature on the collaboration, praising Sweet Gatherings as a hub for community connection. For the first time, I felt a different kind of validation, one that didn't rely on family approval. People came because they wanted to, because they appreciated what I had built, and because the space I created resonated with them. Their smiles, their conversations, and their engagement reminded me of why I had started baking in the first place. By the end of the day, I realized Sweet Gatherings was no longer just a bakery. It was a space where people felt welcome, valued, and inspired. The energy from the event fueled my excitement for what was next, giving me the confidence to continue expanding the bakery's reach and impact. It didn't take long for my family to notice the buzz around Sweet Gatherings. Messages began trickling in, Dad commenting on the rise in customer traffic. Mom praising the visual appeal of the flower arrangements, Lisa noting the engagement metrics on my social media posts. The messages were courteous, precise, and entirely professional, stripped of the warmth or pride I had once longed for. A few weeks later, Dad stopped by the bakery unannounced, dressed in a crisp suit with a portfolio under his arm. He walked through the space, nodding at the displays, sampling a pastry, and offering advice on marketing and efficiency. Mom arrived shortly after with a friend in tow, complimenting the decor and asking questions about operational flow. Lisa swung by with her tablet, reviewing analytics and suggesting adjustments for optimal engagement. Each interaction was polite and careful, clearly filtered through the lens of business and measurement rather than familial affection. I listened and responded, absorbing their observations but refusing to let them steer the bakery's direction. I had spent too long shaping this space around my own vision to allow their influence to override it. Their recognition, detached as it was, felt different from the empty absences I had endured. I maintained my boundaries, treating their input as optional rather than obligatory. Even as they offered advice or commented on successes, I could feel a shift in myself. I no longer sought approval from them, no longer measured my accomplishments against their standards. Sweet gatherings belonged to me, and my choices, my rules, and my dream guided every decision. With the foundation of autonomy firmly in place, I began planning new projects and community events that reflected my values, ready to expand the bakery on my own terms. Months passed, and sweet gatherings grew beyond what I had imagined. The bakery became a hub for the neighborhood, hosting workshops, book readings, and community gatherings. Regular customers became familiar faces, their children learning to frost cupcakes alongside mine, their stories weaving into the rhythm of the shop. The revenue stabilized, and I was able to hire a small team who shared my vision, allowing me to focus on creativity, mentoring, and connecting with the community. I often reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the late nights experimenting with dough, the relentless pursuit of savings, the quiet belief Grandma Eliza had instilled in me. Success was no longer tied to family approval or recognition. It was measured in the smiles of those who found comfort in my pastries, in the sense of purpose I felt creating something meaningful, and in the space I had nurtured for others to connect. Occasionally, my family would visit, their comments restrained and professional, but the weight of their validation no longer dictated my feelings. I had built something that belonged to me, something that impacted the lives of others in tangible ways. With each day, I grew more confident in my choices and more invested in the community that had embraced my dream. Sweet Gatherings was no longer just a bakery, it was a legacy of passion, connection, and perseverance, a reflection of the path I had chosen and the life I had committed to shaping on my own terms.